Hello and welcome to a very special show on Prime Minister Modi's 11 years in power and the changing role and stature of India at the world stage. I'm Gauri Dwivedi, and over the course of the next 30 minutes, we'll talk about Modi diplomacy or Moplomacy, where India is at the center of a new world order. Since 2014, one of the biggest shifts in India's policy doctrine has been in its foreign policy. As the world's largest democracy with the fastest growing economic engine that's powering the world economy, India has emerged as a regional heavyweight and in the world as well, with rising geopolitical and economic might. And as India has grown, so has its role on the global stage as the biggest champion of the global south, in shaping the destiny of the developing and least developing countries. It's no coincidence, viewers, that James Marape, the president of Papua New Guinea, bowed as he greeted Prime Minister Modi. It was a recognition of New Delhi's heft at a time of great power competition where smaller countries fear being caught in the rivalry, ensuring that the global south, the grouping of almost 6 billion people who need access to cheaper technology, more aid, concessional trade pacts, get a voice. And that has been a key part of Prime Minister Modi's diplomacy. And these soundbites of Prime Minister Modi tell you why it's a key feature of the new India and the new policy doctrine that's defining it.
A prayer from the Rig Veda, the oldest text known to humanity, says, Sangachhadvam Samvadadvam Samvo Manasi Janata, which means, let us come together, speak together, and may our mind be in harmony. As far as India is concerned, your voice is India's voice. Your priorities are India's priorities. We, the global south, have the largest stakes in the future. 3/4 of humanity lives in our countries. We supplied medicines and vaccines to over 100 countries during the pandemic.
From cultivating partnerships in the Middle East to doubling down on India's ties with its traditional partners, New Delhi's new foreign policy doctrine has been reshaped to reflect the aspirations of a rising India that must have a seat on the high table in global decision-making, which is why leaders across the world, nations across the world, want to be on India's side. I want to play out some of these very important comments, sound bites of global leaders and what they feel about new India's new foreign policy.
The friendship between the United States and India is the strongest I believe it's ever been. I think our relationship is the best it's ever been between two leaders of the two countries.
India has more promise than any large country in the world.
The takeaways from the meeting.
Takeaways from the meeting. He really cares about India because he's pushing us to make significant investments in India. I am a fan of Modi, so I have to say that.
The relations between Russia and India are consistently developing in all the areas, and the main guarantor for that is the policy led by Prime Minister Modi.
When the world locked its borders and globalization failed, you showed the world that globalization can still succeed and there is still love when the hardest of times hit us. When the world could not find vaccine and you faced the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic, you showed the world what real love and hope is when you shared vaccine with the rest of the world.
Prime Minister Modi is the boss.
Prime Minister Modi's tenure has been marked by big diplomatic wins, viewers, and major foreign policy milestones, one of which included making the G20 representative of the aspirations of the global south. You heard Prime Minister Modi speaking about it because India now champions it. The grouping began in 1999, but it was under New Delhi's leadership that it evolved from an exclusivist club to include the African Union, the single largest grouping of humanity that was kept outside of decision-making for 24 years. From artificial intelligence to digital public infrastructure, New Delhi has been at the forefront of creating and sharing tools that will empower not just India, but the entire global south. This report, viewers, unpacks all those in greater detail for you.
You haven't been alone. You haven't been alone. We gave you through this stupid president, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
In a divided world, one nation has risen with quiet strength, ancient wisdom, and a new vision.
It is natural that our aim is to amplify the voice of the global south. We supported each other in our fight against foreign rule. We can do it again in this century to create a new world order.
In line with its rising stature in geopolitics, New Delhi is now a key player in global technology and global economics. And unlike the Western technology model, which has for long excluded the developing world, New Delhi's inclusive digital policy is another testament to India's commitment and as a leader of the global south. With artificial intelligence set to become a key aspect of how business, defense and technology will reshape the world, India's digital public infrastructure will be key in ensuring developing and least developed countries are not left behind. India has signed MOUs with several countries with the clear objective that as a leader, New Delhi's role is not just limited to being a pioneer in tech revolution, but pave the way for adoption of other countries, particularly the least developed.
AI is writing the code for humanity in this century. But it is very different from other technology milestones in human history.
A key reason Prime Minister Modi attended the Global AI Summit in Paris as India co-chaired the summit, which featured the who's who of global politics.
Governance is also about ensuring access to all, especially in the global south.
India also has a unique position as a bridge between the global north and south. Being part of the BRICS platform allows it to voice the interests of emerging economies, and mechanisms like the Quad helps it play to its interests in the Indo-Pacific and bolster ties with developed countries. India's balancing diplomacy was on full display when Prime Minister Modi visited both Russia and Ukraine to deliver a message of peace, the only world leader to do so. The Prime Minister's "This is not an era of war" stance on the Ukraine war has resonated across all global capitals, with leaders backing India's unique position to speak to the two leaders. India's outreach was not just restricted to the global south. While others closed borders during the COVID-19 pandemic, India opened its heart, delivering vaccines, food and hope to over 100 nations under Operation Maitri. As the old world order is changing, a new center of gravity has emerged, one that does not impose but inspires. And New Delhi is at its center. Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Now, Prime Minister Modi's diplomatic outreach, viewers, has been unprecedented. It's a unique initiative that's spanning continents, carrying India's message of peace, harmony and cooperation. He's achieved many firsts, in fact, and we're going to put that out for you to understand where all he's actually gone for the first time in several decades, starting from Mongolia early on in his tenure. Then there was Israel, there was Rwanda, Bahrain, Brunei, Guyana and Austria. Countries which haven't been touched upon by Indian establishment in terms of PM visits for decades at end. When it came to Guyana, it would actually been almost 5 decades. And that has been the unprecedented diplomatic outreach by the Prime Minister. Speaking of Israel, well, India's courage and conviction to de-hyphenate the Israel-Palestine issue was a key piece of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy doctrine. Besides strengthening India's interests to protect its national and core interests, Brunei's visit highlighted that, the importance of securing its energy interests. And that is what is playing out right now on your screens. And to talk more about what this means in terms of the impact this kind of an outreach has in terms of raising India's stature and what it means for the kind of foreign policy roadmap that we should now be looking at after these kind of milestones that have been achieved. I'm joined by a special guest, political scientist Christopher Clary, to shed some light on what is key to India's diplomatic wins and as far as what is likely to be prioritized going forward on Prime Minister Modi's unique outreach, which has built new bridges for India, whether it's the Pacific Islands, whether it's the Barbados, and all the way, of course, to several other countries. Thank you so much, Christopher, for joining us on NDTV. Let me start by asking you, how has Prime Minister Modi's personal diplomacy, frequent foreign visits, outreach to diaspora, all of that changed India's global perception?
The Prime Minister has obviously invested a lot of energy and time in making both personal connections with global leaders, but also with the large Indian diaspora that lives overseas. And, you know, for those places where the leader has a lot of authority or where the diaspora has a lot of influence because of their commitment to the political process, the fact they may vote in local elections, all of those things provide a ballast that keeps India's bilateral relationship steady in seas that might otherwise cause the boat to overturn.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the most transformative moment of Indian diplomacy in the last 11 years, which one would you choose?
The Prime Minister has made a variety of big bets in his international diplomatic outreach efforts to date. It's difficult to rank order them, but in my mind, his willingness to try to stabilize frequently on multiple occasions Sino-Indian relations has been an important hallmark of his time. His efforts with Pakistan early in his tenure, which ended up being disappointing. And, you know, I think the relationship with U.S. presidents, where India has weathered this moment of intense political polarization in the United States, as well as any other U.S. partner on the planet.
Mm-hmm. All right, Christopher Clary, really appreciate you joining us live to talk more about well, how India has changed, re-evaluated its foreign policy doctrine under Prime Minister Modi. And I'm now going to shift and switch and focus more on another key aspect of geopolitics, which is, well, technology flows. Given the fact that tech is now essentially an extension of geopolitics. And this is where India is emerging as an important stakeholder as it presents an alternative model to the world as far as how technology can be accessed. In contrast, viewers, to the capitalist-led developed model of an AI, there is the India version, which is the low-cost open source model, which provides the backbone for artificial intelligence as a technology to be harnessed by all major countries. But that's not all. It's not just about AI. You take India's digital public infrastructure. Again, a low-cost replicable model that has been a big hit with all major countries. And it's not just the global south. You have even countries like France and several others, developed countries, wanting to replicate India's DPI model. It is now essentially the globally accepted financial model for greater financial inclusion and transparency. As I said, another key aspect of how India has been able to be at the high table, contribute towards humanity on issues that matter today and going forward. Viewers, we've spoken about the technology, we've spoken about the global south, we've spoken about the key aspects of how the foreign policy doctrine under Prime Minister Modi has undergone a sea change. But in terms of the big wins, the big milestones, I want to now get Ambassador Tirumurthy, someone who understands diplomacy, the kind of wins that India has been able to make, and the outreach that also, of course, includes the Middle East. Ambassador Tirumurthy, let me first start by asking you about the big highlights of Modi diplomacy, and then I'm going to ask about the Middle East region, because that is where a lot of gain has been made. But first, the highlights, according to you, of Prime Minister Modi's tenure in the last 11 years and the foreign policy impact that his government has had.
No, I think the foreign policy has become more muscular, and India has been put on the world map more forcefully and with greater credibility. And also we have defined our national interests, I think, more sharply. Because, you know very well, this 10 years or so has not been very easy year. They've been actually very difficult years. And I think we have done reasonably well in these last decade. We have, faced very big threats and challenges very successfully.
The one area that I do want to, of course, also impress more on is the Middle East, an area that you understand very well. One where India has cultivated its relationships, strengthened the ones that it had. And according to you, what has been the kind of ramifications and impact that this has had, the persistent diplomatic efforts that have been made in this region?
No, you're right. That is one of our bright points in our foreign policy. The transformation of our relations with the Gulf is phenomenal. It interestingly coincided with the ambition of the Gulf countries themselves to start playing a more robust role in regional and international affairs. So there was a very happy synergy of views. And let me say, this is one area where Prime Minister Modi has personally invested a lot in the relationship. He has visited all the Gulf countries, and in some countries, actually, he's visited for the first time ever as a Prime Minister of India, for example, Bahrain or probably in Kuwait as well. So, at this point, we enjoy some of the best bilateral relations with them. See, traditionally, we had ties with the Gulf. You recall, through the diaspora, the remittances, in energy and trade, which is really a buyer-seller relationship. But I think in the last decade, we have gone much beyond that.
All right, I'm going to leave it there, Ambassador Tirumurthy, as far as India's Gulf outreach and the impact it is having in terms of our ability to now be part of and be on the high chair around the world. Okay, I'm now going to shift focus and talk about, well, two very important relationships that India has nurtured and built on. One is the Russia-India relationship, and second, the relationship between India and the US, which has, of course, grown multifold during Prime Minister Modi, President Trump's tenure, and is likely to, in fact, continue to build on that. Ambassador Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, joins me to talk first and foremost about the role that India is playing as the bridge nation. Ambassador Sibal, we are the country that was able to go across and speak to warring sides. We were the only ones who spoke to President Putin and also to Zelensky. No other country has that kind of ability and stature. How do you see India's role as a bridge nation set to grow from here, and our ability to reach out to rival nations?
Well, India has always wanted to act as a bridge nation. That was the whole sense of the non-aligned movement, which we founded, that we wanted to be a bridge in the Cold War between both sides. And India had good relations with the Soviet Union and had good relations with the United States, though there were difficulties in our ties with the United States. Nevertheless, there was a dialogue that was continuing at various levels. Then I think the entire rationale of our foreign policy of strategic autonomy actually means that we are not going to be hostage to the policies of one bloc or the other between two opposing sides, that we'll keep our strategic autonomy. Where strategically we have common interests with one partner, we'll go and forge stronger ties with that partner. And where we have strategic ties with another partner, we will not discard those ties under any pressure and maintain them. And this is what we've done with regard to our much improved, vastly improved relations with the United States and our determination to preserve our long-standing, friendly, reliable ties with Russia. I think it was a remarkable success of this policy of being able to act as a bridge between opposing sides, to be able to talk to countries who themselves were not talking to each other, was the G20 presidency, which could have failed had India not been the president at that time. It is very likely that the G20 would have collapsed, as there would have been no joint statement at the end of it. But India was able to carve out a language which was acceptable to both sides on an extremely sensitive issue.
Indeed, absolutely. On that very sensitive issue is when the New Delhi declaration became a big hit. I want to talk about Russia as well. You mentioned that it's a relationship that's gone, and we've strengthened that the last 7 decades, and one that we've built on from a strategic as well as defense aspect. But due to paucity of time, Ambassador Sibal, I also want to bring you in on the India-US relationship. There is the personal bond and camaraderie between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi that adds to the many dimensions that this relationship now opens itself up in terms of opportunities and possibilities.
Well, I think the relationship was progressing very well. During the first Trump administration, Prime Minister Modi and Trump could establish a good personal rapport. Though on the trade issues, we could not move forward, unfortunately. More importantly, there were some concerns that with the Democratic administration under Biden, some of the momentum that we had built up in our ties with the Trump administration might be lost. But actually, it was totally to the contrary. The relationship deepened, advanced during Biden's presidency, despite the fact that on Russia and Ukraine, we took positions that were different. Initially, the Biden administration put pressure on us to reduce our defense ties with Russia, and we resisted that. And the most significant advance that we made during the Biden administration was in the area of critical and emerging technologies, where this initiative, ICET, was set up, chaired by the National Security Council, National Security advisors on both sides. That was a big step forward in terms of tying up our advanced sectors of research and industry together. And there are many other things that were achieved during the Biden years. Although there was another undercurrent of relationship in those years, which was problematic for us. This was the constant criticism of India on the democracy front, on the minority persecution front, etc., human rights issues, religious freedom issues. These were problems that were there. Now, with the Trump administration, it was remarkable that so early on in Trump's presidency, within a few weeks of his taking over, Prime Minister Modi was invited and went there.
All right, Ambassador Sibal, I'm going to leave it there. As you pointed out, the relationship between India and US is set to grow, and due to many such opportunities that lie ahead. Viewers, well, at the end of the day, as India was once known for its soft power with not enough diplomatic and commensurate diplomatic heft. That isn't the case anymore. India birthed yoga. We also ensured 21st June as the International Yoga Day. We're also a country that everyone wants to be in good books with. and that includes the GCC countries, a fact which required consistent diplomatic efforts. The Prime Minister's 7 visits to the UAE, twice to the Saudi Arabia and Qatar are testimony to this. But perhaps the biggest game changer in the last decade has been the embrace and celebration of the Indian diaspora, India's global ambassadors that are now partners in its growth journey. And add to it the contrasting positions that India and China have taken when it comes to how growth should be approached. On one end, there is the Belt and Road Initiative that China puts forth. And on the other end, there is the India, Middle East, Europe corridor that India puts forth. No loans, only development. No debt, just growth. And that distinction is what defines India's approach to countries around the world, to development, and towards growth. On that note, I wrap things up. Thank you so much for watching this very special show.